Welcome to your second episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, November 1st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Penn State game in one day, the game against Michigan, well, it's still in 29 days. Now we're going to be talking to Ross Fulton, the X's and O's guru at BuckeyeHuddle.com. When we talk to Ross, we're sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, so we talked about the Ohio State offense earlier in the week. I think people came away sort of encouraged from that show, or at least not as discouraged as they were walking away from the Ohio State Nebraska game last week. Today we're going to be talking about the defense. We're going to start with some of the things that was maybe a little bit of a return to things that Jim Knowles has shown in the past that we have not necessarily seen a lot from Jim Knowles this season with the Buckeyes. Ross, we're going to start with a couple different plays, both cover two.
Yeah, I saw some people say, "Oh, it doesn't seem like the Ohio State defense did anything different." And to say that, you just didn't like people just weren't paying attention closely, because I would say there was quite a bit different. These first couple of clips being one prime example of that. It's funny. After the Oregon game, I retweeted something that Cody Alexander posted. Who's a great, follow on X for defensive schemes. And he showed that it was right after Knowles was hired from Oklahoma State. And he was sort of like, this is a stereotypical example of what Jim Knowles does. And it was a 3-high cover 2 look where there's, you spill the football outside. And I said, this is very different than what he's done at Ohio State. And, lo and behold, on Saturday against Nebraska, they got back to a lot of this. So this first one is a Tampa 2 3-high look. You have Caleb Downs, who I've circled there as the pull runner. And so he's able to apply himself as a run defender, which again, he showed how good he is at that on Saturday. And you'll have, the corners sitting in the flats. And you can see it even maybe more so from the behind the offense clip that I included here as well. But both defensive ends at the snap pushing inside, pinching hard inside, right? And so we're going away again from the defensive ends running upfield to now we're back in boxing and trying to force the football back inside to now spilling everything. And so, this is just a sort of stereotypical RPO play where you're sliding the guy on the flat. Denzel Burke is sitting right there. It's a great job getting off the block, but also that's, one of the benefits of cover 2 in this situation is you have extra run defenders in your corners. I think the Ohio State corners have taken quite a bit of criticism, but I think they're both very good as run defenders or near the ball defenders. They both tackle well. So cover 2 fits them. You'll notice throughout these clips, one thing Ohio State also did in terms of changing things up is they started flipping the corners. And so instead of like having a right and left corner, Denzel Burke was always going to the field, or say, if the ball is on the hash mark, going to the wide side, and Davison Igbinosun was playing to the boundary. I think Jim Knowles talked about that during his press conference briefly. And, I think that Davison Igbinosun is comfortable as a squat corner, obviously using his physicality. We can talk about the good and the bad of that, but it definitely helped. He's a very good cover 2 corner for that reason. He's very physical. And so this is, again, just, noting that this is a very typical concept of what Jim Knowles did at Oklahoma State. I joked during the game or after the game that ironically, in some ways, Ohio State on Saturday was looking similar to a Don Brown defense. Ohio State fans might not like that reference, but Don Brown had a lot of good defenses. And what I mean by that is that Ohio State's still playing a lot of cover 1, man coverage. And we'll get to some of the good and the bad of that here in a minute. But mixing in a lot of cover 2 with it as your changeup. And that's sort of what Don Brown always did. And before the 2018 Ohio State game caused Ohio State lots of problems with that mix. So, it can be a very successful combination. Again, the concept is keeping teams off balance. But, I thought it was, for anyone who said that they weren't doing anything different on Saturday, I think this first clip proves that wrong.
And we have another cover two play that we are going to get to next. And then I want to ask you sort of a little bit of a forward-looking question, but let's hit one more. And this was, instead of a passing play, this is a running play they're defending.
Yep. And I joked, because Devin Radcliffe, also a Buckeye Huddle, a defensive coach himself, has been calling for Jim Knowles to get back to running more of his three high stuff like we showed the first clip. And I joked to Devin, well, how about if they run the three high stuff except from the 4-3 defense? And so I guess this is sort of the synthesis here between the Oklahoma State and some of what he's done at Ohio State, right? So, they continue to want to put against 12 personnel a 4-3 on the field. And it was sort of, even a little bit more strange on Saturday with Lathan Ransom out, because they would, in the 4-3, play Jalen McClain as the field safety. And then in the 4-2-5, play Jordan Hancock as the field safety and bring in Lorenzo Styles or Jermaine Matthews as a nickel. So a lot of shuffling pieces. But anyways, so this is essentially the same exact defense, right? Except now instead of your pull runner being your middle safety and Caleb Downs, now your pull runner is your Mike linebacker. But other than that, it's the same exact defense, right? So you can see it both from the wide angle as well as from behind the defense. At the snap, defensive ends are plugging those B gaps, right? It's like people have joked about, when we talked about the heavy techniques earlier this year or stunting, like this is what we mean, right? So they are forcing this football to spill outside, and you have your quarter squatting in the flat, and you can then fill it'd probably be a little bit better here if Sonny Styles kept his outside leverage. You're kind of getting two guys in the same gap. Downs has to come clean it up. But that being said, I just think it's an example of how, one of the complaints has been that things seem very different between when they run the 4-2-5 and the 4-3. And this is also a way that you can keep a lot of the same structure in place, except you're just basically subbing in, as I said, a third safety for a middle linebacker.
So we're doing this show, and this is a little bit backward looking because we're talking about the Nebraska game, but we're also late enough in the week that I think a lot of people have sort of mentally moved on to, okay, but what is this going to mean for the upcoming game against Penn State? Obviously a pretty big game. And having rewatched Penn State's game against Wisconsin, it is a creative offense. Andy Kotelnicki does a lot of different and creative stuff. The offensive lineman in motion, and Tyler Warren's all over the place. And with this new different stuff that they're sort of mixing in now and that they mixed in last week, how could that impact what they're potentially going to have to try and do this weekend in Happy Valley?
Yeah, for fear of being dead wrong, because Jim Knowles will change things up game to game quite a bit. I like these cover two concepts against Penn State because, as you said, what Kotelnicki wants to do is get you out of position early with all the shifts, motions. As you said, he'd bring an O lineman in motion. He'll also use sort of nasty splits where he'll split a tight end or an offensive tackle even 2 to 3 yards outside the box. The good thing about this sort of 3 high cover 2 structure is you can set it and forget it. And by that, I just mean everyone gets in place. It's easy to adjust to shifts and motions with cover 2. I guess the downside of it is, as I said, Caleb Downs or if Lathan Ransom is playing are very good as run defenders. And so that's what the single high gets you is adding them as a hat in the box. Here you're counting on your corners in some ways to be your extra hats. But the benefit for Ohio State, as I said, is that their corners are pretty good at doing that. And so in some ways you get a 9-man front and then you can apply Downs as the middle safety. And so I just think, even back to the Oregon game, Ryan Day has harped on this. Part of the issue with all the cover 1 man they were playing was moving guys around to match up pre-snap and then shifts and motions and getting people out of position. So I think one benefit to this sort of 3 high cover 2 structure is just get set. You have equal numbers to both sides of the center, and you can adjust more easily.
All right. Well, that's good to know. Good information for Saturday. Some people can kind of keep an eye on. Now we're going to move from cover 2 to cover 3. This is one where it looks like the cover 3 did its job downfield, but then that kind of opened something up for, nice little pickup for Dylan Raiola on a scramble on this one.
Yeah. So we can get to that issue in a second, but I had to include this play because, like, for me, it made my heart feel full after I saw it, because it was so much of what I've wanted Ohio State to do, and it's just been so hard to find it. So this is the Nick Saban term for what they're doing here is called three skate. All that means is it's cover three to the weak side. So your second safety here, Jordan Hancock, is the one dropping down as a weak hook defender, right? So in cover three, you have, the four underneath defenders. You have two curl flat defenders on the edge. You have two hook curl defenders, and then you have the three deep guys, right? And so for cover three, this is one adjustment. So we've talked earlier this year is another issue that Ohio State's had against trips, which this is, right? You have three Nebraska receivers to the field. Is that they have not been able to roll the coverage, and so they've had to pull linebackers out of the box. This is in cover three a way to do that, right? So what happens here is your weak hook defender, which is Jordan Hancock again as the safety, he is matching, right? So Nebraska sends that guy coming in motion on a deep over route or deep cross. Hancock picks him up. And then you'll see the strong hook player, Cody Simon, handle that curl route. So there's a couple things going on. So we are both rolling coverage, so we don't have to pull linebackers. Granted, this is like a third and long, so they're showing us some pressure. We are matching routes. For the first time, I think, in Knowles' tenure, I saw them carry or match some routes on Saturday, which again is like, that's a big change, right? And so that takes away some of these like deep overs, deep digs that have caused them problems. Jalen McClain's breakup was another good example of that, of carrying a route. And so it's showing there's more tools in the toolbox. Again, we talked about I keep hinting at the pluses and minuses of all the cover one they're playing. One plus, as I said, is getting Caleb Downs, Latham Ranson in the box as run defenders. Like, you can also do that with cover three. I'd like to see them probably mix in some more cover three like this, especially if they can match routes. But as I said, partially it's just, this is the kind of stuff I've wanted to see them do more. So I couldn't help but include it.
So now we're moving on to cover one, and this is one thing you probably don't want to see them do more. This is one of the Davis and Igbinosun pass interference plays, but we're really more looking at the coverage and not the actual result of the play. So let's move along to cover one.
Yeah, and so I guess this would be my one ongoing criticism, is it just, they're very predictable, right? Like, everyone can see this pre-snap and know that this is going to be Ohio State playing cover one. So, Davis and Igbinosun also obviously had the pass interferences. Those overwhelmingly came in this situation where this is actually an RPO. And Dylan Raiola, it's obvious pre-snap, right? He's getting cover one. So he just pulls it and throws that back shoulder throw. This is exactly what I said I'd like to see Ohio State do in these situations to Jeremiah Smith. Nebraska did it multiple times and got pass interferences out of it. I know they want to mix in cover one, and as I said, or be pretty heavy in cover one. It does have the benefit, as I said, of getting the safety in the box. Like, I show you multiple great clips of like Caleb Downs when he's responsible for the tight end, and then the ball, like on a run play, like him inserting himself and making plays. The downside is when you telegraph it like this, it's pretty easy to attack either with this or, again, we saw like multiple pick plays because they're just not very varied in how they run cover one either. And so they just end up letting themselves get, pick routes, rub routes become a problem. There's the one where, Denzel Burke and Lorenzo Styles ran into each other. There's a wide open receiver. They were fortunate that Raiola missed him running on kind of a wheel route. And so I just continue to worry about just the lack of variety in how they play cover one and how they telegraph it. As I said, I also think that, I'm not sure that Igbinosun's so we had those plays earlier this year where, right against Michigan State, where Igbinosun was way off the line of scrimmage and that caused issues. They obviously agreed. They think he's better rolled up. That's part of why they're playing him to the boundary, because they like to roll up the boundary corner a lot more. But I continue to wonder whether their corners are best at playing cover one 40% of the time. And so I think that there's benefits to mixing in more zone. They did it, as I said, on Saturday more. I just would like to see them disguise when they're going to play cover one a little bit better.
Well, one thing that I know Ohio State fans have been hoping to see more is pressure on the quarterback, and that has been sort of a little bit of a recurring issue for them, not being able to get to the quarterback. One way you can get there, run cover zero, bring a whole lot of guys. That's this next one. So was this a little bit of a change up from Jim Knowles in terms of bringing more pressure?
Yes and no, right? This is, I had to include this one as well because it's the response to the myriad of complaints about the quote unquote two-man pressure against Oregon. This is the same concept, but done correctly. And so, as I said, I would like to see them, when they use these pressures, use more zone behind it with zone blitzes. They did that a little bit on Saturday, but Knowles is still going to use lots of pressures with cover one or cover zero man behind it. The good thing is they attacked protection schemes much better on Saturday. And this is an example, like this is done correctly, right? So this is the concept. They have 6 blockers and you're bringing 7. Like you're going to get someone unblocked. The difference is rather than like the defensive line fainting, they engage here. And so like you can see Caleb Downs, he does this correctly, right? Like he knows he's blocked. So he's not going to keep like rushing the passer. You can see him sort of spy once he's engaged. But by doing that, and then Sonny Styles attacks the guard, right? So you saw them a lot more picking off offensive linemen in protection. So he attacks the guard. The running back has to come over and pick up Cody Simon, who's also unblocked. And that leaves Ty Hamilton unblocked right up the middle. And there's, no way to deal with that. So much better job on Saturday in execution, as well as a scheme of attacking the protection, which we're going to see on this next one as well.
Well, let's move right on to that next one. Now, this next one is a cover one look, and they don't get home for the sack, but they get home in time to really make a pretty significant impact on the pass. Yeah,
and again, so accepting the fact that they're going to use a lot of cover one pressures, that is what it is. But they did a pretty good job here in playing cover one. But as I said, at least they're attacking protection schemes. And what I mean by that is like a lot of times on Saturday, you saw them using one blitzer to pick off an offensive lineman to try to free someone, right? So this is actually just a 4-man rush. It's just cover one robber because JT Tuimoloau, he's going to engage with the tight end, just like sort of in that read pressure, and then drop as a underneath robber defender. And so what you're really doing is you're bringing 4, but you're attacking one side, right? You're using 4 against 3 offensive linemen to the right side of the offensive line's protection scheme. And so Cody Simon, he's not really trying to get to the quarterback. What he's trying to do is engage both those blockers, which he does a great job of, right? Like he's going just right at that right guard so that guard has no option but to pick him up. Like ideally that center then is supposed to peel off for Jack Sawyer looping around, but he can't get disengaged in time. And so the running back has to help with that. And then you have Styles coming off the edge. So, yes, they didn't get home, but you can see like Dylan Raiola has to throw sort of and turn his body right away. Like he's not able to fully step into that pass. And so again, I think you're seeing even within man coverage schemes, just a much better job of attacking, as I said, attacking protections, mixing it up front, stunting, slanting, a lot of the stuff we talked about after the Oregon game. And so I think you can see like people should take heart in like, was it absolutely perfect? No. Like you talked about the one scramble on the cover 3. I do think that there were, in allowing more variety in rushes, there were guys who were getting too far upfield that allowed those scrambles. The long Dylan Raiola scramble actually came off of another cover zero cover zero with a rat pressure where Jalen McClain was the rat. And unfortunately, he ran with the guy in coverage and left the middle of the field open for that long scramble. Downside of playing man, another downside of playing man, if Bo Pravola, if I say his name correctly, is in for Penn State. Playing man coverage is going to be another issue because he's obviously a very adept runner, particularly on passing downs. They're going to have to think about that. And probably if they want to play man coverage, have at least 1 or 2 spies or underneath robbers that are keeping their eyes on the quarterback. So I think it's kind of one of those things though that they haven't done some of this stuff, so now they're kind of there's a little bit of growing pains on the scrambling and getting to a far field. So it's sort of, you have to have a controlled aggression, right, where you're doing your pass move, but you're not getting so far afield that you can't. You're allowing the quarterback to scramble. But overall, significant steps forward. You can see much more. Jim Knowles is able to do much more in the back end by also controlling the front and being able to marry them together.
All right. Well, we will see how Jim Knowles attacks the Penn State defense this weekend. It'd be a fantastic, fantastic game, shaping up to be a pretty close game as well, potentially in Happy Valley. Buckeyes and Nittany Lions at noon on Fox. Kevin, Tony, and I will be there covering it all. We'll be out in Happy Valley on Friday night as well for the Ohio State team arrival at their hotel. Hopefully get a chance to talk to Ryan Day briefly and get a sort of an update on things as there's some injury questions around Ohio State, injury questions around Penn State as well. You heard Ross talk about Bo Pribula and whether he'll be starting, or will it be Drew Aller? There's a bunch of really interesting questions that we will try and get to the bottom of for you on Friday night and Saturday morning in the pregame show, all from Happy Valley. Make sure you check out all of our coverage at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle and BuckeyeHuddle.com. And once again, thanks to our sponsors, Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus, check out the menu, and make a reservation for today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.